Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Vanda, founder of the Period Makeover Solution and Fertility Maximizer. And today we are going to be talking about progesterone. So I get concerned questions from women frequently that are trying to conceive, and they know that progesterone is so important for sustaining a healthy pregnancy. And they kind of have some knowledge around the fact that if they don't have enough progesterone, they might either not be able to get pregnant or they might suffer from an early miscarriage. And so I wanted to kind of bring this question of what can I do to increase my progesterone to this podcast episode. We're going to back up from that just a little bit and talk about when you should get your progesterone tested, what things might be contributing to you having a low progesterone. And we're just going to kind of go from there. So the first thing that I want to make sure I cover, because I kind of started off the episode like assuming that you knew this, but some people may not know this because if you haven't sought out fertility or pregnancy education for yourself, this might be something that nobody ever taught you, but you do have to have a sufficient amount of progesterone in order to sustain a pregnancy. Your body has to depend on the uterine lining and your progesterone to keep you pregnant until the placenta has formed enough that it can kind of take over and take on that job. So sometimes when women have a miscarriage in the first trimester, it can be, it's not the only cause, of course, but it can be related to a progesterone level issue. Which, if that's the case, the good news there is that if you know that and that's discovered, that's easily fixed with either oral progesterone or sometimes vaginal progesterone through a suppository. So wanted to get that cleared up first. One of the signs that you might have low progesterone that you want to watch out for, there's a lot of them, but one that I wanted to touch on today specifically is if you know when you're ovulating and you're having a really short time frame between that ovulation and when your period starts, that can be a sign that progesterone is low. Or if your period begins with spotting for a few days, especially like brown spotting, that can also be an indicator that your progesterone level might be a little too low. Now, the best way to assess progesterone, two different ways. Gold standard in typical prenatal care is going to be with a blood draw, and we'll talk in a second about how to do that. You guys know that I am a huge fan of Mira. It's an at-home hormone tracking device and analyzer. I use it with all of my fertility clients. I am obsessed with it personally for my own use. My clients see great results with it. So that is another option. It's a very reliable way to test it. If you don't maybe have like a PCP or an OBGYN that you're currently working with, or maybe that you just can't get into for a while. Sometimes I know you call to make an appointment and they're like, okay, we can see you in 6 months. And you're like, that doesn't help me. So just know that that's an option and, something that you could do. Now, if you're going to get your progesterone tested via blood work, this is so very important. What I have seen happen in the past is women going to their doctor, asking for lab work, providers agreeable, they order it, they give them the order and tell them to go to the lab, get the blood drawn. That's kind of the end of the instruction, or they might even have it in office that they draw their blood. When we are worried about progesterone specifically, the key is going to be when you get that blood drawn, because you have to know and understand when during your cycle progesterone should be the highest and when it's most important for it to be the highest. So if you're going to go to the lab, it's really important that you be tracking your ovulation with some ovulation strips ahead of this appointment and know when you ovulate, and then go about 7 days after that to get the blood drawn. Otherwise, they are going to tell you to go get your blood drawn on day, it's 21 is typically the general, they'll send you just on day 21. Well, if you're someone that ovulates late in a cycle, then your progesterone won't have peaked yet on day 21. Like there's some people that haven't even ovulated yet in their cycle on day 21 yet. Flip side of that, if you're someone that ovulates earlier in your cycle, say on day like 12 or 10 or so, and you wait until it's day 21 of your cycle, your progesterone may have already peaked and be trending down. And if you don't have those, you're not going to be going to the lab to get your blood drawn for multiple days in a row. You wouldn't know that. You would just like look at that level and think, oh gosh, well, my progesterone's low. I'm not producing enough. When in reality, it might have just been that you had the labs drawn too late and it was already starting to decline. It could have been higher a couple days prior to that. So the timing piece, especially if you're going to do blood work where it's just that one time that you're going to get the labs drawn, very, very important. Now, and I'm just another plug for Mira. If you are tracking with me in my program and we are testing on a more regular basis. I'm not going to say every day because it's not every single day, but if you are tracking most days throughout your cycle, like my fertility clients are, then we're going to be able to see what progesterone is doing on a regular basis. And that's, again, it's just so helpful. Okay, so let's tackle what things impact progesterone. First of all, you have to ovulate in order to produce the progesterone. So LH triggers, LH peaks, it goes up really high. The level of LH, that's a hormone. That's what triggers ovulation. The egg is released, and it's called the corpus luteum, that is left there from that egg being released is where we get the progesterone produced from. If you're not ovulating that month, you don't release an egg. There's nothing there to make the progesterone production happen. So, number one, you have to be ovulating. Other things that are going to impact this, if you are ovulating and you're just not making enough progesterone, of course, as always is the case, stress can be a big factor here. You might be having just like an acute, tragic life event going on. Or you could be someone that's under like a chronic, even if it's a low level, but like a chronic level of stress all of the time, that can impact you. And when we talk about stressors, we always have to remember that it can be any form of stress, not just like, oh my gosh, I feel so stressed out today. Yes, that can impact it, but also what physical stressors, environmental stressors, emotional stressors, all the different types of stress and the accumulation of those can be impactful. If you're on medications, that is something to think about and look into. Might be worth Googling. Can this particular X medication that I'm on, can it lower progesterone? Does it impact progesterone production? If you have been diagnosed with PMOS, formerly PCOS, that is going to impact because it impacts when you ovulate. In most cases, not always, but in most cases. Is there an issue with your thyroid that we need to evaluate? Do you have an elevated level of prolactin? That's also a lab that you could get drawn, could see what that level is. Is there an imbalance in your iron levels? Do you have too much iron and you're in an iron overload situation? Or do you not have enough iron or enough stored form of our iron? That can be an issue and impact progesterone production. And then do you have some type of metabolic issue, like where maybe your blood sugar is really imbalanced, maybe you have insulin resistance, maybe you have some fatigue, like your overall energy is really low, and at like a cellular level, there is some support needed that can also impact your progesterone. In terms of some low-hanging fruit things that you can do, just diet lifestyle changes you could make to help support progesterone, you want to make sure that you're getting enough healthy fat in your diet. Avocado is going to be a great source of this. If you tolerate dairy, getting full fat dairy is a good one. You can also get a lot of healthy fats from like nuts and seeds. So, incorporating a good amount of those into your diet is great. And then vitamin C. Vitamin C is relatively easy to get in your diet, especially if you like fruit, because that's a great way to get it. Also, vegetables, and then supplement it if you need to. If you're like, I don't really eat those things very often, be honest with yourself about that and then get it in supplement form. It's okay to do that. It is best absorbed through foods, but we have to do what we have to do sometimes with supplements. And then, if you think, or you kind of, maybe you go get the labs, or you have experienced an early miscarriage and you haven't sat down and had a conversation about that with your OBGYN, and asked the hard questions of, do I need progesterone? Do I need to supplement my progesterone? Do I need a prescription for progesterone? Um, what form should I take? How much should I take? How do I take this? They're going to give you all of those instructions. And if they don't, ask them or ask the pharmacist when you pick it up so that you know that you're using it accurately, because that is very, very important when you are using progesterone to support a pregnancy. So I hope that all of this chit chat on progesterone has been helpful. If you are currently trying to conceive and you are looking for answers, you're wanting some support, I would love to support you in my Fertility Maximizer program. That is where we are working together for 8 weeks, one-on-one. We're digging into some functional testing for you to uncover if there's any mineral imbalances that might be impacting your fertility. And we're also mapping your hormones all throughout a cycle. We're checking estrogen, progesterone, LH, and FSH at multiple different points throughout your cycle. And I am looking at those results every day that you test them. And I am communicating with you in our private chat about, okay, here's today's results. This is what they mean. Looks like we're entering your fertile window. Here's how to take full advantage of that. Okay, fertile window's over. Now we've got to, here's what we're looking for. We're watching progesterone to see what it does. I'm giving those little updates and that guidance all throughout our 8 weeks together. And then, of course, I'm also available for the questions that you have along the way. So the link for that is in the show notes. You can always just go to my website, wellnesswithvanda.com. There's a pink button at the top of the page that says join my program. You can go there and read the full page that gives all the details. I gave a high overview just now, but you can read all the details about what's included and how to get signed up. So I hope to hear from some of you guys soon. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will talk to you later.